So you've come here for the truth. Well, we've got the truth and nothing but the truth. Here are your hosts, Robert A. Bianchi and David J. Bruno.
All right, welcome to WMTR Radio's Nothing But the Truth with your host Bob Bianchi and Dave Bruno, a show about mindset from two lawyers from New Jersey, not about the law, thank God. And we're doing it a little different today. I am not in studio. I am in my EMT shirt, not because I'm working on the ambulance today, not because I'm working at BLG, but Dave, I'm not feeling good, man, but I had to be on because I know you're waiting and we have an awesome guest. So here I am in my home studio.
Yeah, the show must go on, Bob. So if you're watching, you're going to see a little different setup from us. But we have April Maroshick. And she is exceptional on many different fronts. She broke into the industry of modeling and pageantry, and she has her own business. She acts as an agent and helps women go through the modeling scenes and book things. But one thing that really stood out to me, and one of the reasons that I really started to follow her, was her project, Healing Through the Lens. She combines her passion for photography with a mission, raising funds for DNA testing to help these cold cases, these John and Jane Does across the country, bringing closure to families and help solving those cold cases. And for us, I mean, we are former homicide prosecutors ourselves. Bob was head of the prosecutor's office in the county where our office is. I was a homicide prosecutor, and we do criminal defense, handling all kinds of cases now, all throughout the state of New Jersey. So when I saw that, boy, did that jump off the page, that service that you bring to the communities, because we all know the trauma that victims go through, knowing a loved one that has been injured or killed and not getting a result or not getting closure from an arrest. And I could only imagine what that feels like to a family. So thank you for coming on the show and sharing your stories and your service and the impact that you make to the community. And I just want to start off, take me back to the early days of pageantry and photography, how that gave you the experience and gave you the push and the purpose to get into what you're doing now.
So I actually used to be really shy, and I started pageantry back when I was 18, and I'm now 31. And I was, like I said, I was extremely shy. I wouldn't even go into like a grocery store. And I decided to look into other women who I felt like were really confident, and they all seemed to have a background in pageantry. So I decided to give it a shot, and I actually really loved it. It broke me out of my shell. It helped me make new friends. It helped me discover parts of myself that I probably wouldn't have without pageantry, because it forces you to work on all aspects of yourself, things that you probably wouldn't acknowledge without it. And when I was at my first pageant, I met my first modeling agent. She scouted me out. So that kind of worked out for me. I've been with her ever since, and I have another agent now as well. So ever since then, I figured that it's probably in my best interest to vary what I do and not just model, because I'm only 5'7" in this industry. You have to be very tall to be successful as a model. And 5'7" is not that tall in this industry. So I do full-time commercial modeling, but stepping into the photography aspect and also owning a modeling agency allowed me to network with people that I wouldn't have been able to because I didn't have certain opportunities as a model. But that also opened up other modeling jobs for me. Once somebody met me in person, and they saw the way that I would work, they started to trust me. So then I was able to kind of build my relationships in all different aspects. And it's helped me learn a lot too.
Talking about building community, Dave, she'd probably be very impressed that Dave and myself became the greatest fans and spectators of one of our previous guests. We've had a lot of awesome people like yourself on the show, who was Miss Teen New Jersey. Okay. And then
Uma Sophia. April.
Uma Sophia. I love Uma Sophia. She's
Oh
so
man,
sweet.
yeah.
Her and her mother. Yeah. Her and her mom.
Dad too.
Yeah.
We had her in, and then when we had her in, she was like getting ready to go for Miss Teen USA, and whatever, how competitive it is, and we're watching the show, and like Dave's like, "Are you watching?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm watching," and they're like, "She's like 25, and she's like the top 10." I'm like, "Oh my god!" And then the top like 5, and top whatever, however it was breaking down the numbers, and I'm screaming, like me and Dave are screaming on the phone. My wife comes, she goes, "What's going on?" She goes, "Why are you watching a teen?"
A teen pageant.
And then she won, and we were like, "Holy crow!" Completely freaked out. She came back to the studio. We did another interview with her. But I mean, salt of the earth family, beautiful person inside and out, of course. But something that strikes me is the similarity of the story, because she got involved in this because of shyness and kind of being bullied a little bit, and she wanted to do something that was so outside and opposite of how she felt, and that's what got her into pageantry. There's a lot of connectivity there. Did you know that?
Yeah. So I did know that about her. Yes. What's interesting from my perspective too, I was bullied pretty bad in school, to the point where I left my high school. I was able to homeschool myself. The Board of Education had a meeting with my parents, and I was also allowed to skip 11th grade if I kept my grades high enough, because of how bad the bullying was. And I did it. And people were like, "Aren't you like rushing your life by getting out of there?" And I was like, no, I was so happy that I did it, because sometimes I feel like you're just stuck in your environment that you're put in. And I think pageantry allows for you to get unstuck and meet people who are like-minded. So a lot of these women who are competing, I would reckon almost all of them have some sort of story, maybe not entirely the same as Uma Sophia or myself, but something that's leading them to self-discovery, a path of self-discovery.
The other one, just last thing before Dave goes, that I really have come to learn and admire, and I don't think I really came to learn it. I understand, is that when you're a trial lawyer, to a certain extent, when you're in front of a jury, or even as an EMT on the street, if somebody's like bleeding out or you're doing CPR, you're involved in a performative scenario. And what I mean by that is you're kind of trapped into a place that you voluntarily put yourself, where you have to perform. There's no safe spaces. There's no, give me a couple of minutes. You're there on the stage. People are burning every move you make, every word you say, every turn, everything about. And this can be, I don't think people that are not in a performative thing, like in a pageant or an EMT or a trial lawyer, don't realize the mental pressure and mental tenacity it takes to get past those nerves. Now, I always say, like I just lectured yesterday to the Bar Association, I never get past my nerves, but I've learned to deal with them by identifying them when it's occurring. I see you. I know who you are. Your fear. I've seen you before. I know who you are. I know I will vanquish you. That's how I do it. Do you relate to what I'm saying, and do you have a technique?
1000% I relate to what you're saying. I also am someone who suffers severely from chronic PTSD. And because of that, I've had to learn other techniques of coping with not just dealing with pressure, but anxiety in general. Sometimes it's actually easier for me to step on a stage and give me a microphone, I'll talk. But if you're putting me in a situation with people one-on-one, or maybe a group setting, like a party, I am going to be the girl in the corner. Like that's, there are some things where you just kind of learn where your comfort zone is, like where you're most comfortable. And then it's just powering through it, like you've powered through anything else in life. And I always have to say, I've been through worse. Like, it doesn't matter if the pressure is a good kind of pressure, the way that you would have in a pageant setting, where it's like you're at that top 5 question portion and you're nervous, or if it's something that is a little bit more serious, life or death, something like, as you would experience being an EMT, where someone's life is on the line or your own life is on the line. The way that you deal with pressure, I think, is the same almost across the board. And it's just mentally powering through it. Like, you just cannot let it stop you. Nothing is allowed to let your body stop. You have to just keep going.
I love it. Love it. Yep.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wonder, you've obtained all the success at a very young age. What is driving all this? What is motivating you to get to where you are?
A fear of not doing what I love. I'm so afraid of living my life sad, unhappy. I think I already lived so much of my life like that because of the way that I've struggled mentally, that I kind of refuse to allow myself to do anything that isn't bringing me total joy or growth in some capacity. So I wouldn't want to settle in any way, whether that's with work or relationships. I am divorced. That's a new thing for me that I'm trying to navigate, especially in conversation. It's really just about not settling.
Keep going, right?
I'd love to link up with you on LinkedIn and have you check out my newsletter, Sirens and Summations, because Dave and myself both gave TEDx talks, and mine was referring to deathbed confessions of an EMT. And the reason I did that was because it struck me at a young age, my teenage years, to listen to people at the end of their life that we were transporting to the hospital talk so negatively about their life that I wish I had done. And if only I had done this, and I feared doing that, and my life was worthless. I mean, literally listening to these negative comments of people that had no opportunity at that point in time, unfortunately, to correct it. I know we say we can live minute by minute, but these minutes were really dwindling quickly. And yet there was, every now and again, you'd get this incredibly resilient, spirited person who was going through the same catastrophic illnesses and was positive, and you loved being around. And every time you got their ticket or their call, it's great, we're going to go see Mary today. And she's like, hey, Bobby, how you doing? How's school? And it put me in this path of, like, I never want to be on my deathbed saying I didn't do something because I was afraid to do it. It had such a profound impact on me in my teenage years. And it sounds like you're kind of in that same space.
Well, when you think about it, especially with not letting fear hold you back, we've all been in positions where we were afraid, and we didn't have a choice. Whether it's something that's considered small to one person, big to another person, whatever it is, we've all been afraid at some point and have had to power through something. So why not take that chance in a positive way? Why not just do the same exact thing, but do it with the rest of your life? I think it's really just a matter of fear of, living not authentically. When I think of like another job, I went to school for law and economics, and there was a point that I wanted to be a homicide prosecutor. Funny enough. Yeah, I went to John Jay. And I loved it. I loved everything about school, but putting everything into use in like day-to-day practice, even just as a paralegal when I was doing that at the time, I was so stressed out from being around people who were so upset all day long because they're dealing with the worst things imaginable. That's why they're there. That's why they need you. And that's not something I was able to do for myself. I was like, I think I just have to change. I have to put myself in an environment that is a little bit more uplifting, something that I'm capable of mentally handling, but that also pulls at my gifts, which is why I just decided to go into the industry that I'm in now. And I was like, I'm going to have to push it in every possible way that I can, because it's not going to come easy to me, especially at my height.
Wow. Authenticity, we talk about fear being the joy, the thief of joy. It reminds me of Dr. Brene Brown.
I love her. I was just listening to a podcast of hers this morning. That's so funny.
Yep. The Gifts of Imperfections, a book that we give our clients at the Bianchi Law Group.
Book.
We also trained with her in San Antonio for her. Yeah, we
were the only two lawyers out of hundreds of psychologists and psychiatrists. They looked at us like we were crazy, but
if there's any way to get into someone's head as a lawyer, she's someone who understands the inner workings of somebody's mind.
Yeah, the social work and the research that she did for the Gifts of Imperfection, and that she talks a lot about fear, because ultimately the fear prevents us from taking steps forward. The fear prevents us from having the conversation with a new person, or going to a place, or engaging in a group or a community. And oftentimes the fear holds you back from some of the greatest blessings and relationships and joy that comes from the things that you could be doing because of that. But it's a great time to wrap up this first part of the show. You're listening to Nothing But the Truth. April, thank you for coming on, and we'll see you after the commercial.
At the Bianchi Law Group, our team of former prosecutors and certified criminal trial attorneys specialize in criminal defense and domestic violence cases. When you need a law firm with courage, compassion, and the commitment to fight for you, call the Bianchi Law Group today.
Welcome back to WMTR Radio, something about the truth. All right, Dave, man, this is amazing. A lot of similarities here, a lot of mindset. You know, one thing I love, April, about our show is that we have people from such an eclectic background, from those who are extremely famous and lawyers and pageantry people now. We may have a run on pageantry people, Dave, and maybe on the higher levels. And yet the ones who are so successful and seem so zen, if you will, or connected with who they are and what they do, are the people like yourself. And they have the same qualities. And those qualities about facing their fears, not that, and this is what I've always said to people, like when I was the prosecutor, and I lectured yesterday, Dave, at the Bar Association, and I'm sorry if I rip the Band-Aid off and say it, but it's what I've noticed. The greatest obstacle to my staff achieving their greatness were their fears. They were afraid to go into court and try a case. They were afraid to lose the case. They were afraid and blah, blah, blah. And I get it. You know why? Because I was there. I was that person. So I understood that. And that's why, ironically, when you talk about Dr. Brene Brown, the reason we got connected in all of that was my favorite quote, which I have hanging right over there if you were able to see, is The Man in the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt.
Oh, that's my favorite too. That's my phone background.
Oh, that's your what background?
My phone background is The Man in the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt.
There, if I could turn the camera, which I can. April 23rd, 1910, Citizenship in a Republic speech. And I had it printed up in big posters and placed in various parts. And that's how I started getting really deeply into the mindset space. I always lectured on it, but I was going around trying to explain to them with the quote on the wall that what I meant. And what I meant was the fear should not be of losing. The fear is when you're in is no fear. You go into the arena, you fight the fight, you do the best you can, and regardless of whether it's a guilty or a not guilty, is irrelevant. The rest of the people that are sitting in the stands that are critiquing what you're doing are doing that, sitting in the stands but not getting themselves marred and beaten up and bloody, as it says here in the poem. And so when I first read or saw Dr. Brene Brown's book during a very difficult, tumultuous time of my life, personally and professionally, and I saw that the basis of her book was The Man in the Arena, I'm like, oh my God, this is incredible. So it was both an affirmation to me and then led us on a journey to become certified facilitators for her. But the bottom line that I'm seeing in everyone is that my mom used to say there's no courage in the absence of fear. It took me a really long time to understand what that meant. There's no courage in the absence of fear. You're bringing that, working through it. So this is what you do. Talk to our audience about what is it like when you're up there? What is it like when you have the fear and you've decided you're going to work yourself through it? What are you doing to calm yourself down when the you know, all the bad chemicals are running through your body and making you sweat and your dry mouth and all that kind of stuff? How do you do the performance?
So this is kind of going to sound a little funny maybe, but because of the fact that I almost live in anxiety all the time, it's almost no different when you're on stage. It's kind of like the same state that I live in all the time. It reminds me of back when the pandemic happened and everyone was freaking out. And I wasn't really freaking out. Not that I thought it was fake. I wasn't, you know, I know it's real. I know people died. I know people were getting sick. You had to, you know, do what you had to do. But I wasn't living in a state of like panic, like everything was emergent, because I was always in that state. But I also, because I'm always in that state, I've learned good coping mechanisms. Part of that, like you said, is naming the emotion. When you're able to sit there and actually tell yourself like what it is that you're feeling, for some reason, it's a lot easier to tackle. If it's kind of like this unknown, lingering emotion, you don't really know where to go with it. So when it comes to, you know, the sweating, the panicking, the quick breathing, which often happens a lot, especially when you're under high pressure, it mostly happens before I'm on stage, not when I'm on stage. For some reason, I go on stage, the zen just kind of happens, but it's those anticipation nerves that are the worst for me. You just got to take your deep breaths, and you have to trust your body's ability to be resilient. So when I am panicking, I understand that it's not like I'm going to die. My body knows that my body is reacting to a fear, but it knows that it's going to calm down and everything's going to be fine. So you kind of have to trick yourself. I always say that in my own head, I'm my own mother, not to take away from my real mother, but in my own head, I'm my own mother, where I have to like separate April from the mature adult in me and being and mother myself and be like, it's going to be okay. Like, you just got to breathe, give it a few minutes. You're okay. Like, and I just literally talk to myself like that. It seems to be one of the only things that works for me. And also trusting myself. I trust myself very much, which I do think is a big deal. I think if you don't trust yourself, you're going to lose any battle you face.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the questions that we got yesterday were what are practical tips, and I was thinking to myself, we've done nothing but give practical tips, and part of and the reason is I think that sometimes people are just so far away from what you just said, and to me that's very powerful. What you said is something that resonates with me very. I know I'm going to be okay. I know that I know my body's going to be able to withstand this. And you're right. Once you get into the game, the funny thing is, I'm loving it at that point in time. And I'm so in the zone. I can't believe I worried about it in the first place. Does that make sense to you?
Exactly. 100%. And that's why I feel like sometimes when things scare you, maybe it's a little bit of a sign to run towards it as opposed to running away from it. Especially when it comes to things that are like hobby related or career related. Because that's going to be the thing that's ultimately going to bring out the life in you. Because if you're that afraid of it, you're clearly passionate about it. If you didn't care, there would be no fear. Like you said, the courage, you know? So, you just have to know you care and you take it as, also I take anxiety as a sign of excitement in those moments. I'm like, oh, I'm not nervous, I'm excited. Is it true? No, of course not. But it's my way of tricking myself temporarily.
Wait a minute. I'm sorry, Dave. I know. I'm sorry. But wait, I've been thinking about that in the last couple of years. Like, it's hard to look back when you're doing it because you're doing it with such a different lens. But I'm wondering, I wonder what would have happened if I just said it wasn't nerves and it wasn't anxiety. I was labeling it that. It may have just been really being excited about the thing.
That's exactly what it is, to be honest. The same receptors in your head and the same chemicals that your body gives off when you're anxious also happens when you're excited. So you really can trick yourself into just being anxious if your thoughts are negative. So that's why when they say try to have positive thoughts, it's hard to do initially, but once you keep repeating it to yourself, you'll actually start to believe it, and that's going to change everything about the way that you feel and the way that you relate to your emotions. It's all about the way you relate to them. Like, you can't really control if the anxiety is going to pop up. Eventually, as you get adjusted to things over time, that'll settle. But until that point comes, you just have to kind of like change your relationship to it.
How you relate to them, Dave?
Well, look, I mean, pressure's privilege, right? Another thing we have on this wall is that it's flipping the mindset. It's understanding, look, could be on the couch, comfort. You know, I'm getting away from comfort, honestly, April, in my life. It's going through the hard things, doing the hard things, stepping through. That's where the greatest improvement and growth comes. And that's essentially what you're talking about and what you've been doing. You've been stepping out on these stages and the radio show and all the things that you're doing. And you're forcing yourself to go through the hard things, which ultimately pops out, next version of improvement and growth. I want to pivot a little bit too, because I do want to hit this before we end here about your project, Healing Through the Lens. Can you explain that? Can you explain what that is and why you're doing it?
So there are two different aspects of it. One thing that I do before I get to the DNA Dough project, because that's a little heavier. One thing that I do is I will meet with people who I think have like a really interesting background, whether it's mental health related. It's all mental health related in some sort. For example, I interviewed a Navy veteran who suffers from chronic PTSD, and we sat down, we talked. He showed me all of these pictures of, like, I basically interviewed him. We went through all the pictures of his time in the military. He told me all of these stories, and then I photographed him doing the things that he loves to do that help him during those moments of when he's having like a flare up, or if something triggers him. So he loves to do woodworking and gardening, and basically he really likes the hands-on types of things. So so I photographed him in his natural element and talked about his history and then what he does in order to overcome those things. And then I published those articles just online, just so people can, check it out if that's something that they're interested in. But then as far as the fundraising aspect of Healing Through the Lens goes, I offer photo shoots for people that are on location, meaning not in studio. That way nobody's paying a studio fee. That way 100% of the proceeds can go directly to the DNA Doe Project, which is where they discover, the names of Jane and John Does that are found across the country through genetic genealogy testing. They use a program called GEDmatch, where you can upload your ancestry or 23andMe DNA kit, and it can help find either if there are people who don't have names, or if there's even a crime where the criminal has some sort of like relation to you. It's just a lot easier. What do they use? NamUs is for missing people, I think, is where they try to find the names of the DNA of the Jane and John Does, and then CODIS is what they use with the criminals to try and find their like
DNA.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So that's what I do with that, and I just donate all of that money strictly straight to the DNA Doe Project, because I'm just really passionate about that. I think that it's honestly crazy that it's not somehow automatically funded by the government in some way, or that the fact that I'm able to raise enough money to help close some of those cases. I'm one person. Imagine if everybody across the country just helped in some regard, how many people would have their names back, how many families would have closure. They don't know where their family members are. They don't know anything because they don't know what happened. These are all people without families at the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a really beautiful thing that you're doing, and I think that it's more than just how you're making a difference in the world to these people and giving the closure that's needed. But I don't know, it's another thing I've been thinking about a lot lately. I think that a lot of the mental health problems that we have and a lot of the anger and the dissension is that everyone is so into themselves. Nobody's volunteering, nobody's donating, nobody's stepping outside of themselves and making a difference in the lives of other people beyond maybe their profession or their career. Yeah. You are doing that. What motivated you to, with your busy schedule and a successful career and a career in the public eye, decide to go do something that's so, by the way, the other part I love this, it's so niche-y. It's like everybody's like, well, what can I do to volunteer? Somehow you found this way, this little niche. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, so I guess what inspired me mostly was because of my experience with PTSD and depression. I just can't let people sit in pain like that and not do something, whether it's relevant to anything that I've experienced or not. Seeing somebody sit in agony without closure, without knowing something, and that's just the way that they have to live their life. Like I truly cannot sit by and watch that happen without having a hand in helping in some regard. But even outside of that, when you think about the end of your life, I think about the end of my life every day, which is maybe scary and sounds really dark to some people, but it's just how my brain works. I think about it every day, and at the end of the day, I know that the things I'm going to care about are not related to my career. As grateful as I am for my career, I know that at the end of the day, that's not what's going to matter to me when I'm on my deathbed. So I just want to do as much good as possible. That way, when that time comes, I don't have those regrets.
Oh my God, you have got to see my deathbed confession on the TEDx. that's it.
Yeah, I know. I gotta. Yeah,
it is. Unfortunately, Bob, time is up on the show. If you could, let's get some more information about April, where everyone could find her, and then we'll close it out.
Yeah, I'm on all social media as April Maroshick. My last name, I'll spell it because it's a little confusing. Maroshick, and I'm on all sorts of platforms except for X because I have nothing much to say. I'm not like a big Twitter X person.
Here.
Yes, I'm here. Well, I have a lot to say when it comes to conversation, but when it comes to just tweeting like a random thing, I'm like, no, not for me.
No. I agree with you.
I mean, it's so hard. Look, I'm all for multi-purposing and like getting out and diversifying, but you're right. It's so hard.
There comes a point where I'm like, I can't do them all. You can't do them all.
Well, the other thing too is your photography too. I mean, you're a model photography. It does well on the other platforms, especially Instagram. So for anyone looking for more information about April, find her on Instagram, follow her projects and all the things. I mean, she's doing great stuff out there, making impact and serving communities. And that's where the fulfillment ultimately comes.
Yeah, and if anybody else is interested in like volunteering or donating whatever they can to the DNA Doe Project, please look them up too. They're great people. So
absolutely. If you're listening to this on the radio, all of our interviews are taken on video. Today is a little bit different. Bob's in his home studio. I'm here at BLG Studios. But you can find April's in the car. I mean, but we're making it work, right? Because there is a message for this. If whoever's struggling out there, there's help out there. There's services out there. There are people that care out there. So you could find all those videos, nothingbuttetruthpodcast.com. Signing off from BLG Studios. I'm Dave Bruno with my host, Bob Bianchi. Thank you, April, for sharing on Nothing But the Truth.
Thanks, April.
Thank you guys for having me. Thank you.
Peace.
Bye.
We're the Bianchi Law Group, a team of former prosecutors and certified criminal trial attorneys.
But here's the thing. He put himself in a box when he said...
Relied on by CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, Law and Crime, and news leaders across the country for our criminal defense expertise.
In a search warrant, you have to have probable cause that a crime's been committed and there's evidence in a particular place.
When you need a law firm with courage, compassion, and the commitment to fight for you, call the Bianchi Law Group today.